Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Today I wanted to do a little bit of a different video. It's around the mindset. Naturally, if you've been following my channel a little bit, you know that I do videos about retirement planning, primarily on two facets of it. One is the financial aspect, which if you can find any of these videos online, they'll talk about Roth conversions and the best tax optimization things. They're absolutely important because it's the first thing that we all think about when we retire, but it's really boring. So today I really don't want to talk about those kinds of things because many of the things you can find online already and somebody's probably done it better than me. What I wanted to talk to you about today was a book I picked up, and it actually was on a comment section in one of the YouTubers I follow. And it's this book called Die with Zero. It's by Bill Perkins. And it's a really interesting book because you all know that the amount of money you accumulate, you're not going to be able to take it with you. Money is just kind of this number. Kind of reminds me of a video game like hit points. And, you know, we are kind of geared to continue to save. And our society and our economy is built around tax optimized strategies so that you could take advantage of this for your retirement. See, what I've discovered is, and this relates to even fundamental principles around something in Hinduism called delaying of gratification. And Bill Perkins actually talks about that. When he talks about Die with Zero, what he's really talking about is start spending your money and changing your mindset so that you can be in the mode of going away from saving into spending. When you think about opportunity cost, the opportunity cost of investing is not just like spend it aimlessly, but to spend it on experiences, because experiences are a form of like gratification of points, hit points. It's utilizing your hit points. And he talks about when, you know, this guy has actually been very successful on Wall Street as a commodities trader. And I think he made so much money, retired in the Caribbean islands and American Virgin Islands. But I think that amount of money that he made gave him an epiphany that despite the fact you have all this money, the pursuit should really be around happiness. And I can't disagree with that. You know, part of the reason why many people become unhappy and we do nefarious things is because of money and just the pursuit of it, that and power. And I don't want to go off onto kind of a political rant because I'm starting to sound that way. But what I did want to go through with you is just some of the key points that I picked away from the book that I thought would be very, very nice to share with you. And so what I did was I took a few of the clips from the book, and you know, a lot of these quotes that I'm going to share with you really resonated with me just because it's really the way I think we forgot how to live. So let's just dive into it a little bit. On chapter 3, what he says is, to fully enjoy life instead of just surviving it, you need to stop driving mindlessly and actively steer your life the way you want it to go. And that is about setting the goals of what you need to, how you want to build your retirement framework. So I told you in the past on other videos that you have to retire into retirement. Many of the comments I've seen from folks, even on a Facebook post I put today out, many people go back to work because they didn't set it up right. And, you know, I know that's a very hard thing to do. I mean, when you're working for how many years and maybe you take enjoyment in your work, it's very hard to think about what something else is in retirement because it's almost like building a new career. But I think the difference though is that in a career, we're out there to try and make money so that we can live, so that we can get to the point of retiring. But once you're retired, you don't have to think about money, or you shouldn't really have to think about money. You should think about the things that would enrich your life, like, you know, volunteering, or maybe even doing hobbies that you never really could spend time and or money for because maybe you didn't have any either. And so now that is the time to start looking towards those goals. Personally, you know, I've decided to set up my entire retirement framework by doing volunteer work for cats because I love cats, but also doing these YouTube channels and doing the research, even by reading these books for you, really inspires me, and it really makes me want to do this. And I found this, you know, I found all of this YouTubing and retirement planning by accident, but I really truly enjoy it. So then it really helped me figure out the goal that I wanted to step into when I go into retirement. So keep that in mind, that you have to have some goal. You don't if you're younger, you don't have to define it now, but if you're older, you should start thinking about that. Okay, so the next quote he gave was on page 42. For some people, it can be the same with working for money. It is just easier to keep doing what you've been doing, especially when what you've been doing continues to reward you with society's a universal form of recognition for a job well done, also known as money. You know, when I read that quote, it reminded me of the behavioral economics of video games. You know, the folks who make video games, they employ and consult with a lot of behavioral economists on incentivizing and keeping people, you know, sticky to the game. You know, as you know, there's so many games out there. And to keep an audience and keep that recurring revenue, you got to keep them playing and keep on generating content. Well, there are new games out there, looter shooters, what they call them looter shooters. And what that is in the game, they make the game in such a way that the incentive is to get some kind of object within the game. And it drops like with some kind of probability, maybe like 2%. But if you continue to play the game long enough, eventually that item will drop. But notice, if you play the game long enough, meaning you have to keep on sticking around with it. And that's essentially what Bill is saying in this quote. You know, the reward, the item drop is money, because we have nothing else. Now, for some people, it's other things. It's a recognition. If you look at folks in politics, it's power. Or maybe not really just power, but I think that is incentive enough to want to be in politics, because you can set policy. But regardless of that, I think all of us keep aiming for some kind of reward, some kind of validation of what we've been doing, which is money. And the more money you have, or the greater your hit points, you can basically say, wow, I defeated the game. And I think that's something that you have to rethink when you get into retirement. It's no longer the game. You don't have to play it any longer. The game now is what game do you want to play, right? It's a blank slate. And so that could be either daunting or it can be very, very exciting, depending on how you look at it. Okay, so the next one is on the same page. If you spend hours and hours of your life acquiring money and then die without spending all of that money, then you've needlessly wasted too many hours of your life. It goes back to the old saying, time is money. So if you're trading time for money, then you better get something back for it. So it's essentially very important just to say, if you've made this dough, what do you want to do with it? Now, some people, you know, they spend on Porsches or cars or things like that. But for myself, you know, for example, like this phone, right? This is the Samsung Galaxy Ultra S25. It's like top of the line Android phone. I like it. It does what it needs to do, but I'll be honest with you, this probably is not doing any better than what my S22 did. It has a better camera, but it doesn't give me satisfaction or joy. It was nice when I first got it, but that was such a fleeting moment. I'll tell you what gave me a lot of satisfaction when I think about it, and I continually think about it. My wife took us on a trip on the Wonder of the Seas. It's a Royal Caribbean. It's one of the largest cruise boats. And when I think about that experience that we had on that boat for the week, it was so much fun. You know, the family was having fun. We were doing things together. We ate wonderful foods. We were visiting ports. We were just chilling out. Everything was being done for us. That experience alone was well worth the X amount of money that we spent on it. And now, to this day, I actually said that to my wife last night. I asked her, let's go back on that trip, because all I can think about was just the wonderful time that the family had together. And, you know, to me, that amount of money that my wife, I remember at the time when we were on that trip, I was so grumpy because I'm like, I've never spent anything like that in my life. My wife, on the other hand, she's a good spender. But you know what? I learned a lot from that experience. And I think now, reading this book, having that experience, I put one and one together. It's not worth it to hoard the money. It's just spend it, because you're not going to keep it. You know, maybe you can do it for your legacy, but that's a whole different other set of problems with probate and estate taxes. All right, so keep moving on. On page 50 says, this is a long one, nobody wants to spend their last years in poverty, so it's understandable that people save for the future. And I'm not saying you shouldn't save for the future. What I'm saying is that people who save tend to save too much for too late in their lives. They are depriving themselves now just to care for a much, much older future self. A future self that may never live long enough to enjoy the money. You know, that's a very important point. I know a lot of people who, and like I said, I made a Facebook page today. There was somebody who actually wrote on my comments that they retired at 65 and their husband retired at 65 and he died 3 years later. You know, that is just a sad thing. I don't know if it's the way our economy and our society works, but there's no reason for us to have to work to 75 because that's when you could probably get your maximum Social Security payout and then drop dead later 3 years later. You should be doing this way sooner in advance, in my opinion. If, you know, the question I posed on Facebook was how many people here have retired between 55 and 60? And a lot of them actually retired well before that. A good substantial amount of them said they're 52. I'm 55, I'm gonna be 56 in March. All the people that I spoke on that channel just basically said that they've already retired. So, you know, the thing about money is that you're not gonna be able to take it with you, like I've stated. Enjoy your time. Enjoy your time with the money. And making videos here in my house is almost nearly impossible with all the like side noise. So let's just keep going because maybe this is not going to pick up. I have no idea. So let's go on to the next one. Page 167. If you wait until you're 65 or even 62 to dip into your nest egg, you'll almost certainly end up working longer than necessary for money you will never get to spend. You know, this one requires a little bit of calculation, but I think even if you did it just back of the envelope, it'll come out the same way. There is no advantage, unless you just have nothing better to do, to work from 62 to 65. And I know that the reason people do that is because of Social Security. It's a lack of education, in my opinion. It's a programming. And let me give you an example. I am working with a college advisor. Right now, my biggest hurdle in my retirement journey is the college expense. But having said that, I'm working with a guy that knows how to fill out the FAFSA form. The thing is that when you talk to an accountant, what they tell you to do is invest it in a 529. But you know what? If you have a 529, it turns out that on the FAFSA form, they count that as an asset. There's ways to make sure that you can fund college, very equivalent to like a 529, that is not counted on the FAFSA form. So what I'm trying to say is there's many things that we do in our day-to-day, in our retirement planning, that if you don't look at it very carefully, you're gonna make mistakes. And 65, going from 62 to 65, in my opinion, is a mistake. I don't think you have to work that long in order, just because you want maximum Social Security. Okay, so let's move on. On page 188, he says, people are more afraid of running out of money than wasting their life, and that's got to switch. Your biggest fear ought to be wasting your life and time, not am I going to have X number of dollars when I'm 80. So, you know, this goes back to my analogy about the video games. I think many people look at it like that. I mean, you know, money or your net worth or your whatever you have in the bank account is a number, right? And you don't feel the number. I don't know if you've ever seen what $1 million looks like. You can carry it. Requires a briefcase. So just imagine if you have $1 million, you carry it in a briefcase. But the thing also is that it's just a number. And I think many people get in this mindset that it's like a video game. You got to keep racking up the numbers. And there are games like that. There's Grand Theft Auto where you accumulate and you steal money, and it's, you know, the money is the points. And I think in real life, that's the way people view it, is that they've got to accumulate these points. But, you know, along the way, if your mentality is that way, your mindset is that way, you're never going to switch out of that. It's always going to be like, I need more, I need more. You know, this reminds me of a movie I saw a long time ago. It's Japanese. The producer is something with Kitano. But essentially the story is about a Korean man who came over during the colonization period in Japan and went to Japan to work. Now, if you don't know a little bit about Japanese Korean history, the Japanese colonized Korea. A lot of Koreans had to go to Japan to find work because Korea was just in bad shape. But what ends up happening is because they were a kind of a discriminated ethnic group, the Koreans, they couldn't find jobs. So what naturally ended up happening is they went into crime, organized crime though. So this one crime leader, the Yakuza boss, or who became the Yakuza boss, he made all this money, and it's all cash naturally. They're doing all kinds of nefarious and illicit things. But he had accumulated so much money that it was in the walls of his house. That's how he stored it. And there's another movie about the cartel, same thing. They made so much money. Pablo Escobar, same thing. They made so much money, they didn't know what to do with it, so they buried it, or they put it in the walls. And it just goes to show, you know, if you accumulate all that money, what good is it if you can't spend it? Look at Pablo Escobar. That guy died like what Donald Trump would say, like a dog. And he did. He was shot on the roof of a house trying to escape the DEA. And I'm sure he lived pretty nicely in Colombia for what he had. But the amount of money that he had, he could have lived a better life. And he certainly wouldn't have died in that manner. And so what's the importance of money if you can't enjoy it, if you can't enjoy it legally even? And, you know, I think that requires some introspection on everyone's part as you go into the retirement journey, even myself, that when you've got enough money, just say you've got enough and just spend it. You're never going to run out. I did this analysis, it's on my channel. If you spend $10,000 every month and all you did was invest in the S&P 500, regardless of the taxes and other things, $10,000 I figure may be enough for most people. You're never going to run out of money if you started in 2010. Turns out you're going to make more money. The portfolio on a $2 million portfolio goes to 3.5 with a $10,000 spend. So I'm going to leave it here with this video. You know, this book really was inspiring. I would highly recommend you pick it up and, you know, reconsider your mindset about how you spend and what you spend things on. Because I think the most important thing is to spend on experiences. Expend on things that you're going to remember, especially the time you spend with the loved ones that you really care about. Because remember, there will be a time when you're not going to be able to do any of that. In closing, take stock of what's important to you. And, you know, you may not have as much money as the next guy, but all of us don't have as much money as the next guy. So be thankful for what you have and take it away and enjoy your time here on the earth as long as possible. Thank you very much for watching. Please like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.